Hi everyone, I'm Gemma Stafford, professional chef, cookbook author, creator of Bigger Bolder Baking and the host of the Need to Know podcast, where we bring you everything from the baking world of entertainment and celebrity gossip. Today is a special episode as we partner with No Kid Hungry to highlight the amazing work they're doing to combat childhood hunger. And that is why we're raising funds and awareness for No Kid Hungry, a national campaign to end childhood hunger in America. You can join us in the fight against childhood hunger by making a donation at nokidhungry.org/need to know, or you can scan the QR code below. Every dollar we raise can help connect a child to 10 meals. In this episode, we will explore how baking brings people together during the holiday season. We have a lot of special guests joining us in support of No Kid Hungry, so get comfy, it's time for Need to Know. We start out every episode of Need to Know with our segment we like to call Hot from the Oven. And this is where we talk about baking trends, pop culture, celebrity, everything in the world of baking. With me, as always, is my lovely co-host, Ami Shukla, who is the culinary director of Bigger Bolder Baking.
Hi, everyone.
So Ami, I've got a great baking trend for you today. It is called, I think something that we can relate to, baking is my love language. Mm-hmm. These videos are everywhere online. It's people baking something to share. They're talking over the video and they just talk about how baking calms them, how it kind of grounds them, how it's a way for them to share their love. And from two people who have baked for many, many years, I can strongly say that baking is obviously my love language. And what do you think?
Absolutely. I love it. It's the first thing I go to when I think, oh, I want to do something special for somebody. Friends are coming over. I'm going over to someone's place. I'm always kind of thinking, what am I going to make for them? What's going to make them happy?
Yeah. I'm a feeder. Yeah. I think that's why baking is my love language. I've always wanted to feed people. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily need to eat it, but I want to make it for you and then watch you eat it. Yeah. But I think that's why, if the one thing that I can bring to the table, it's a good thing I made baking my career because it's literally the one thing I know how to do. But one thing I can bring to the table is baked goods. No matter where I go, it's baked goods. Yeah. Nobody is ever disappointed. Everybody loves it. But baking is definitely, especially in today online, baking seems to be a love language for so many people.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it's sort of addictive. Like you make something, you watch someone's face light up, you watch people eat it, you watch how much people enjoy it. It feels good. It's, and I think definitely for me, I would say there's a little bit of ego involved. I feel so good making people feel good.
Me too. There's emotion. I really hope you like this. Yeah. But then also tell me how good it is. Yeah. Right now. And I'm going to stand here and stare at you awkwardly while you eat it. Tell me this. What is your favorite thing to make for people when you think about what the one thing that you make for somebody? What is that?
Well, I'll immediately go to chocolate chip cookies. I've been working on one particular recipe for a really long time. And so I have so many different iterations of it and nobody complains. I'm like, oh, look, I've tried another batch. I've tweaked something and everyone gets so happy. So for sure, and then, there might be other things. I'll make an apple crisp during the fall, which is, one of my favorite things. But
I'm sorry,
cookies.
I'm sorry I asked you that question first because a chocolate chip cookie is also the one thing that if it's a school gathering for my son George, or we're going to a friend's house, or you're dropping off something for the teachers or whatever it is, it's always cookies. Yeah. And I'm particularly proud of my chocolate chip cookies, as are you.
Yes. We love chocolate. Who doesn't love chocolate chip cookies? It makes everybody happy. Though I will say I have a lot of gluten-free friends. And so my go-to for them is Hawaiian butter mochi, which you and I developed together. And after we had learned about it, and it is so good, and everybody, gluten-free or not, loves butter mochi.
I will say the one thing that I try to think, what's the unique thing that I can bring? I'm from Ireland. I was 25 years of age before I moved to the United States. So my whole identity is being Irish and growing up there and the food there and my family and everybody that was around me. So when I go to bake something that I try to make it kind of unique, I will make pavlova. which is not specific to Ireland, but because we get a lot of influence from around the world, especially from Britain, Australia, and New Zealand, that a pavlova is number one, it's a very fancy dessert, and it's incredibly easy. And in America, when I bring it to people's houses, they literally have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
But I don't have to ever, it's not a hard sell for anybody.
No, it's marshmallowy, it's whipped creamy,
It's sweet, it's the texture, and then you get the cold, whipped cream, and then all the fruit on top. Yeah, pavlova is definitely something that I think is extra special that I bring.
Yeah. I also feel like, there are cookies, which is sort of a general, but then I spend a lot of time trying to think about who I'm making something for. What flavors do they like? What do I see them gravitate towards? And I feel like I spend as much time sort of dreaming up what I'm going to make for somebody as actually just presenting it to them. So, which is part of the fun for me.
Yeah, it's all part of the part of the love that you're sharing.
Yeah, yeah.
We have asked some friends here at the Bold Baking Network and beyond to share how baking is part of their love language. So let's hear from them.
Baking makes me feel happy. Just to see the reaction of people's face when they enjoy one of my pastry makes me the happiest person in the world.
When I bake for others, it's a way for me to show that I care. A handmade gift is really the most thoughtful and meaningful gift there is.
When I'm baking, I feel in control in the best way possible. I've had anxiety for years, and I found that baking really helps me calm my anxiety. When I'm baking, I'm just focusing on getting the ingredients together and making something beautiful. I'm not thinking about my problems. I'm not thinking about any worries. All I'm thinking about is this project that I'm working on. And at the end, you get to enjoy something delicious. It doesn't get any better than that.
Baking makes me feel happy.
Baking for someone is definitely a love language, and so is making something together, which is why I love this next trend, and that is hot chocolate boards. It's a trending, creative way to serve hot chocolate in a visually stunning way that's interactive and perfect for gatherings. Here, we've created one, and as you can see, you've got your hot chocolate, and to that you can add marshmallows, candy, whipped cream. You've got cookies and brownies for dipping, and then we also have a little adult section where we have espresso powder and ground chocolate, unsweetened chocolate to make the hot chocolate less sweet, and a few other additions to make the perfect hot chocolate. Gemma, you have your hot chocolate?
I'm ready to go.
I can't wait to begin.
You don't have to tell me twice, Ami.
I know. I think I'm going to go. So what I really love is, I think hot chocolate is so good, but it gets a little sweet for me. So I have this unsweetened chocolate that I'd like to stir in to make it a little darker.
I'm going to do the same.
Yeah.
Because I love a chopped bar of hot chocolate in my hot chocolate.
Yeah.
Let it get nice and melty in there.
Yeah.
And you know what else? Something that I, around the holidays, when I, even growing up when I was younger, I wasn't, I was a teenager. At the end of Christmas Day, we would have coffee after dinner and after, with our dessert and after dinner. And I would always put on Christmas Day freshly whipped cream in my coffee.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things that during the holiday season, when we're all a little bit extra, yes please, when we're all a little bit, we all go a little bit extra with the treats, that it just makes you feel like this is special.
Yeah. Oh, can I put some M&Ms on mine?
You can do whatever you want.
I mean, I know that's just for kids, but it is the holidays.
And then we have brownies for dipping in our hot chocolate.
So fun. I love this.
It's funny. Like you said, it's interactive. You have lots of different choices. You've got different textures.
Yeah. Yeah. Look at that. Oh, and a candy cane. This is the best. Just using a little candy cane to stir everything. I mean, who needs a little spoon?
Yeah, it's customizable. Also, it's good for the whole family. And, around the holiday season, sometimes you might just get a bit fatigued from pies and big desserts. And this is really just kind of, if you're feeling like you might have, you might be capped out on the sweets, do a little hot chocolate and a little something.
Yeah, absolutely. And, sometimes you get a lot of gifts. You get baked gifts, you get candy, and this stuff sort of kind of piles up. What do you do with it? Well, this is a really wonderful way to share some of that. Open up some of these packages and put them out in this really festive way. Kids really respond to this sort of visual fun thing that they get to play around with and design and create too.
Yeah. You know, this could be a new tradition for people.
Yeah.
You do not have to be an expert baker to do a hot chocolate board this holiday season.
Absolutely. And if you do want to add some baking to it, you know, you can make some cookies, you can make brownies, you can make different things to actually go on top of the hot chocolate board. Now let's hear from some other top baking celebrities and experts on how they would build their ultimate hot chocolate board.
My hot chocolate board would feature tons of marshmallows. Marshmallows are literally like my favorite thing, and I particularly love mini ones, and I love minis in hot chocolate.
My hot chocolate board will feature some milk and dark chocolate. I like to mix them both together. I will add a little honey marshmallow, homemade honey marshmallow, maybe a little bit of gingerbread because I like my hot chocolate with a little bit of spices. And I'll finish it up with probably a dollop of whipped cream and some cocoa powder.
So that's all we have from Hot from the Oven, but stick around because we are going to be talking about family baking traditions in a segment we call In the Mix. Before we do, remember that you can join the fight against childhood hunger today by making a donation to nokidhungry.org/need to know, or you can scan the QR code on the screen.
This is a message from the largest childhood hunger campaign in the U.S. Millions of kids nationwide live with hunger. That's a problem we know how to fix. It's a miracle. We tackle the root causes of hunger by advocating for better laws and protecting benefits and food assistance programs. We help communities feed kids. Kids who depend on schools for meals and in the summer. We believe that 3 meals a day are essential to a child's health and happiness. That we should feed every kid, regardless of income. That when we support kids, we're supporting our collective future. Our mission is to end childhood hunger, and we need your help.
By supporting No Kid Hungry, you can help provide meals to the children who need them most.
I think supporting No Kid Hungry is something very important for me. Food insecurity is something I suffer from when I was a child growing up. I think being in a beautiful city like New York City, seeing so many great restaurants is great, but there's also people who need help. And being here for them with the time, with money, with any resources that we can give is something deeply important for me.
Now it's time for a segment we call In the Mix, and we're going to be diving into the topic of baking traditions around the holidays. During the holiday season, it's a really special time for family, friends, and loved ones to come together to share food, to share culture, to share traditions. Now it is time to bring on our first guest, renowned chef Joanne Chang. And I cannot say enough about Joanne. She is an incredible baker. She is the owner of Flower Bakery and Cafe in Boston. She is an absolutely fantastic chef. And Joanne, I see a lot of similarities with our background. You are a best-selling cookbook author. You have a Harvard degree in applied mathematics, and you are the winner of a James Beard Award for Outstanding Baker in 2016. The similarities are that you like to bake, and you've written a cookbook. Anything else? Everything else is no. It's amazing. It's absolutely. In a previous life, you did applied mathematics at Harvard.
I did. Yes.
That's incredible.
And everybody people always ask if my math background helps with baking, but as you know, you do a lot of math in baking.
Of course it does. Absolutely. Yes. That's half the problem.
So see, we have a lot in common.
Joanne, I follow you on Instagram, and your bakeries are so popular. Your food looks absolutely amazing. This show is about baking traditions, especially around the holidays where people come together. And I know that you are just flooded with people all around Boston who are coming to your restaurant and bakeries for baked goods for their pies. And I'd love to know, what is your most popular item around the holiday season?
By far, by times 100, it's our pumpkin pie. And I guess I'm not surprised. I mean, it's what everybody expects when you go out for Thanksgiving or when you're having Thanksgiving dinner at home. I think it feels like every single customer gets a pumpkin pie, but I love it. We love our pumpkin pie.
You know, a pumpkin pie is simple, but you can get it, you know, I've had some bad, questionable pumpkin pies. So when you
Agreed.
do get a good one, especially with a lovely made crust, it really does make all the difference.
Yes. And that's what we try to focus on, making sure that the crust is super flaky and making sure that the custard is nicely spiced, but not overspiced, creamy, but not soupy, and not too sweet.
And do you have any, what makes your pie unique, Joanne? Are you allowed to tell us that?
Yeah, we actually combine our pumpkin with not just heavy cream, which I think is pretty typical, but also some sweetened condensed milk and some evaporated milk. And so having all of those three kind of dairy products in the mix results in a really creamy custardy texture, which I love.
Wow. I've seen the process that, you know, during the holiday season that you go through with your pie crust, that you have a machine that flattens a piece of pie dough into the shape of a pie pan, which I just think is absolutely amazing. What is the machine
such
called?
a game changer. We just call it the pie press. It probably has a more formal name, but we call it the pie press. And we actually just upgraded to a double pie press, so one on top of another. And we can put in and make 2 pie crusts at a time. We roll out our dough into little discs and then plop it into the pie pan and then press a button. And the machine just smushes it, spreads it, fills it, and crimps it. And then we're done.
That's incredible.
Wow.
I have Ami do that work for me. She's a really good pie maker because she always does the edges like so beautifully and different every time. But maybe I need to invest in one of those machines.
No.
And I'm just curious, Joanne, you know, that being your most popular, and it has to be like your like Flour Bakery and Cafe is now part of traditions across America. Like your pie is on their Thanksgiving tables like that, and Christmas and Hanukkah and all the holidays. That's pretty incredible.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, we've been around for 24 years. And like you said, we both write cookbooks. And so you know how gratifying it is when somebody takes a recipe that you've worked on and is able to replicate it at home. And so if you don't live in Boston, you can still enjoy our pumpkin pie by taking the cookbook and making it at home. So it's definitely very rewarding.
And Joanne, I'm curious, my own curiosity, how many pumpkin pies do you sell every year?
Gosh, this year, I think we capped it at 1,000. I mean, there is a limit to what the team can produce, especially since it is such a date-dependent holiday. You know that everybody who's getting your pie is going to be eating it on that Thursday.
Yeah.
So there's only so much you can produce ahead of time. And I think we've maxed it out to about 1,000.
Wow. That is, and that's only pumpkin.
Exactly. And then we have apple and pecan.
And
we have trifecta, which is pumpkin and pecan and whipped cream all in one pie. So we have a bunch of options.
What's your favorite pie?
My favorite pie is actually an open-faced crostata. It's a pear cranberry crostata. It's the same pie crust, but instead of putting it in a pie shell, we just take the pie disc and we put some frangipane, some almond cream, some roasted pears that have been roasted with ginger and butter, fresh cranberries, and then fold it up like a galette and bake it until it's nice and golden brown. And I love the combination of the tart cranberries and the pears, the juicy pears with a little bit of sweetness from the almond cream. And then again, that flaky, buttery crust.
That sounds like
that
so good.
That is right up your alley.
100%.
Yes.
Ami loves anything fancy.
It sounds fancy, but it also sounds really homey and just
exactly.
wonderful.
And
you're right. It's both.
Yeah.
I love anything with the frangipane. It's so good.
Oh.
That's true. Actually, frangipane and anything I'm on board with.
Yeah.
I think that's a secret ingredient. I really do in baking. I think people often will eat things and think, wow, this is so good. What is it? It's because we've slipped in a little frangipane because it's got such great flavor, texture, just a little bit of that je ne sais quoi, that can
and
add so much
particularly
to a pastry.
that combination of almond, frangipane, and pear, the juicy pear.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
good, so good. How has baking for your family influenced or has it influenced your career as a baker and a chef?
Well, it's funny because I grew up in a very traditional Taiwanese household where we literally had no sweets at all, except for fruit. I mean, that was our big extravaganza, was we'd do a big fruit plate. So I didn't really have a lot of baking experience growing up. And once I got into baking, I think I made up for lost time by baking for friends, baking at work. And so now when I think about traditions and holidays, what I'm really thinking about is my post-childhood life. And now my parents, they love all the baked goods that I make. But the traditions that I have are really baking at home now with my husband, and of course, getting stuff from Flour Bakery and sharing it with all of my friends.
I always remember this really funny story in your first cookbook about bananas and how your mom was always like trying to get you to have bananas, and then you make this like wonderful banana bread.
Exactly.
But
exactly. One of the few things that she would bake.
Yeah. So in addition to that, were there any other of those personal things that you bring into the bakery? I know there wasn't a whole lot of baking, it sounds like, but.
Well, one could say that the bakery was launched with the Toll House chocolate chip cookie, because even though we didn't have sweets at home, every now and then my mom would grab that yellow bag in the grocery store, and I knew it was going to be a special day. We would go home and we would make these cookies, and they were always so good. I mean, any cookie fresh out of the oven is going to be great, and especially if you're not used to getting sweets at home. And so I would play around with that recipe when I was a little kid. I eventually made that cookie when I was at Harvard. I used to sell it to my fellow students at the student-run grill. I continued to make that cookie when I was post-Harvard working as a consultant. And then when I opened Flour, I took that recipe, tweaked it, kind of upgraded it with amazing chocolate, a little bit of bread flour, a little bit more salt than what is typically on the package. And that remains our chocolate chip cookie to this day. Wow. So that's a baking tradition from way back when. Wow. And it shows, the simplest things, like a chocolate chip cookie. Everybody has had it, loves it, but that can launch a whole bakery. And that's what we did.
Oh, yeah. You can make the fanciest desserts in the world and nothing really beats a chocolate chip cookie as far as I'm concerned.
Exactly.
No, yeah, I had
exactly.
2 last night. It's a confession. I had
jealous.
2.
I had one
they were
this morning.
So good. They were so good. I'd love to know, Ami and I spoke earlier about our traditions around the holidays in our households. What are what's one of your traditions that stands out that you do every holiday season?
So every holiday season, except for the last, obviously COVID put a big wrench in everything, but a really fun tradition is because we produce so many desserts at the bakery, and because one of the important parts of my job is tasting everything. One of my favorite traditions is to order literally one of every dessert, every pie, every breakfast pastry, every quick bread that we offer for the Thanksgiving holiday, and bring it to our best friend's mom. Hosts a huge Thanksgiving dinner for, there's always a core group of about a dozen people, and then there's people who come and go throughout the years. And when it comes time for Thanksgiving dessert, we just put out every single pastry, and it takes up the entire dining room table. And then everybody goes to town. We all cut up little pieces of everything and make like a smorgasbord plate for each person. And it's just the best. Usually after eating Thanksgiving dinner, you feel like you can't eat anymore, but somehow we always make room for that dessert. It's
Sounds like so much fun.
I love that. I love that idea, because also, especially after such a big meal, I do, as much as I love my dessert, I don't like to be overwhelmed, like little bites of multiple things. It doesn't, I feel like I can do that, and then I can try multiple things, and I'm not going to feel ill after it.
Yeah.
So I have to be portion controlled. So that's a really good idea.
I also love that visual of all of these different things that you can possibly try all on one table. It just seems so just incredible. Very fancy.
Yeah. And then also it doesn't have to be about pie either, like quick breads,
exactly.
Cookies.
And we have cakes.
Yeah.
And cookies.
Cakes.
Right.
Yeah. Joanne, you've had a significant role with No Kid Hungry for many years. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, my husband and I have been working closely with No Kid Hungry for over 20 years. It's been a big part of our life, honestly. I'm currently on the board of directors, and it's something that really inspires me every single day. We got involved, as many people do who are in the food business, because we realized that there are people out there who are hungry, kids who are hungry in America. And in our line of work, where our job is to feed people, it just seemed unfathomable that there are people who don't have enough food to eat. And so that was kind of our into this organization, just to learn about how we could potentially shine a light on this issue in America and help raise funds to eradicate the problem. And over the years, we've watched amazing success in connecting kids who don't have regular breakfast, regular lunch, during the summertime, regular meals, connecting them to meal programs that are already earmarked by the government for kids, and connecting the kids to the programs so that they can have food on a regular basis. So that's been really inspiring to see the team at work, and learning how we can continue to just highlight this issue so that more and more people can get involved and try to help eliminate this whole crazy problem.
Joanne, thank you so much for joining us today. And those watching at home, if you want to learn more about Joanne's amazing bakeries in Boston, go to flourbakery.com. And you can also follow her on Instagram, because there's a lot going on there at Joanne B. Chang.
We are back with accomplished baker and author Zoe François, who's made her mark in the culinary world with her warm and inviting approach to baking. She studied pastry at the Culinary Institute of America and honed her craft in various restaurants, and also through her popular cookbooks, including Zoe Bakes Cookies and one of my personal favorites, Zoe Bakes Cake. Her recipes are not just about creating delicious treats, but they're infused with personal stories and nostalgia, inviting us to create our own baking traditions. Welcome, Zoe.
Hi, so Zoe. Great to be here. Hi.
Zoe, so today we're discussing how baking during the holidays can really bring families together. And so we wanted to know, what is one of your favorite holiday baking traditions that you like to share with your loved ones?
Oh, there's actually so many, but I would say the one that I do every year is a sugar cookie house. It started out really modestly as just like a regular, almost like a gingerbread cookie house, but made out of sugar cookie. And then I started doing it to replicate the house that we lived in. Aww. And so every year it gets more and more ornate, and I have the boys help me. And it's a fun way to sort of honor the place where we live and where I raised my children. And it's gotten a little bit out of hand at this point in terms of how sort of over the top I go, but it's a really, really fun tradition.
I love this, and I would actually like you to settle an argument between me and Gemma. Is it edible or not?
It's 100% edible.
Yes.
So it always sounds nice and edible.
Yes, it's edible because all of the structure is held together with royal icing. Mm-hmm. And so you can eat it. The only thing is that, you know, these days I put so much time and effort into it. It's become more of like a showpiece, mm-hmm. and like a centerpiece at the table. So after, you know, it's been sitting around for the holiday season, you may not want to eat it. But technically it is edible.
Yes. Is anyone allowed to walk by and like pick off a piece of candy, or no one's allowed to touch it until the holidays are over?
Well, okay, there's allowed, and then there's just doing it.
That's true.
And when you grow up with kids in the house, it's going to happen.
Absolutely.
And, yeah. I mean, you put a cookie out there, it's meant to be, you know, eaten. So you can't blame them for trying.
I'm with you. I'm 100% with you.
So this happens in our house. Ami and I have this big debate about edible gingerbread houses, and my thought is, you know, can you eat a gingerbread house? Yes. Should you eat a gingerbread house? I this is where Ami and I disagree. But yours does sound lovely, though. I'd love to see a picture of that.
Oh, absolutely. I'll send you a picture. Basically, when my husband and I saw this house, I pictured it as a cookie, and that's really the reason I bought it.
Sounds like the perfect house.
Zoe, I am deep into your book, Zoe Bakes Cookies, and it's a perfect time of year to bring out a cookie book. So good timing. There's some really heartfelt stories around those cookies. I'd love to hear, one in particular, tell us about a specific cookie in there that stems from tradition in your household.
Yeah, this book really, it was an ode to all of the cookies that I love, but it really became about my family traditions in a way that I didn't even see coming. I mean, I grew up as a little kid on a commune, and we weren't allowed to have sugar. So going to my grandparents' houses was really special. I mean, it's special anyway, because I get to spend time with them, but also it was like the one time of year that I was allowed to have sugar. And my granny, Neil, would bake all the Christmas cookies. She would have tins and tins of them. We would have shortbread cookies and maple coconut bars and all kinds of sugar cookies. And it was just the most spectacular display. And I loved every single one of them. And I have those recipes of hers. I got her recipe box. It means the world to me. And now I get to make those same recipes with my own tweaks added to them for my own family. And then on the other side of my family, I have some of my Bubby Berkowitz's recipes. And those recipes, it turns out, and I honestly didn't even know this going into writing this book, that these recipes come from my great-great-grandmother. Wow. And they just have so much power and strength and story behind them. She had a bakery in her home in Kyiv and baked because bakers love to bring joy, but also for survival. It turns out that one of my favorite stories that I learned while writing this book is that her daughters were stealing the ingredients that she was using to bake, to sell the ingredients to make money so that they could all come to America. Wow. So what I discovered is I literally wouldn't be here. My family wouldn't be here if it weren't for baking and cookies and the community that she built and the life she built based on baking. So it really was such a journey for me and connected me to my family in a way I hadn't even seen coming. So many stories like that. And I feel like every household has food memories like that.
That's lovely. And you definitely feel that around the holidays. What an incredible story. You definitely feel like around the holiday season, like I do go back to like what I grew up with in Ireland. That nostalgia and those memories, those food memories, like they're so strong, and you want to be comforted and feel, warm around the holiday season. So that's when like you really start to break out those kind of classics that you're so familiar with.
Absolutely. And those smells of baking bring all of that flooding back. And it's just the most wonderful thing, especially at this time of year.
Zoe, your this now current book, all about cookies. What kind of suggestions, what kind of tips do you have for encouraging people to bake cookies around the holiday season, especially young bakers? Because when I was a young baker, all I wanted to do was cookies. And it's a really great time, like now with my son George, who's 4.5. It's like a fantastic kind of intro to baking, isn't it? Like a classic cookie recipe.
Absolutely. And I really feel like cookies are the best entry point to baking for kids. I mean, when my boys were really little, I would make a batch of sugar cookies, stamp them out, usually in dinosaurs or whatever they were into, sit them on the counter glaze them and have them go crazy with the sprinkles. So for little kids, the decorating is where you kind of hook them into the baking, because they just want to play with the sprinkles and decorate and see the wild colors. And then as they get older, they want to be more involved in the process. They want to sit on the stool and stir in the bowl and get into the actual baking of it. And so there are so many ways to incorporate your kids. And I feel really lucky that my kids were into it, and that hopefully, well, now I have these books that I can give to them, so they have all the family recipes right there. And hopefully they're off doing their own thing, and they're going to start their own baking traditions at their own houses. It's so exciting.
It's so special to have a book like that to pass on to them. I can't tell you how many times I get on the phone with my mom. I'm like, how did you make this thing? And she's like, oh, do this and do that. And it's all word of mouth. And I just think, oh, to have like this gift that you can give them of all of these recorded stories and recipes is really special. It's amazing.
It's really true. I think that that's one of the things that I took away from this process is I am now like encouraging everybody to get those recipes. Ask your grandparents, ask your mom and dad, your uncles, your aunts for the recipes, and put them in a safe place, either a box or write a book about them. But having that family tradition written down so that you can pass it to your kids is really such a gift.
Zoe, what one word would you use to describe the feeling that you get when you're baking?
Joy.
Oh, that's the perfect word. Next question.
Absolute joy.
Yeah, that was easy.
That was easy, yeah.
It does. It just brings me like absolute joy to bake. It's why I do it. It's why I like to teach, is because I want to bring that feeling to other people who maybe are a little bit intimidated by baking, because I love it so much.
Yeah. Well, it shows just in hearing you talk about it. It really does. It's definitely filling me with that same joy.
Yeah. Good.
Can you remember the first dessert you ever baked, and what was it and how was it received?
Okay, the very first dessert that I ever baked, I was really, really young. I lived on a commune, and one of the other kids that lived on the commune with me, we would go into the pantry, and you have to understand this was a huge pantry, and we would grab ingredients, and the very first thing that we ever baked that we could eat was a Dutch baby. And it was so spectacular to me because we mixed eggs and flour and milk together, put it in the pan, put it in the oven, and watched it explode in the oven. And I was hooked from that moment on to baking. Not only watching it in the oven, but then being able to take it out of the oven, covered in maple syrup, and devour it. So it was received really well by me. I can't remember if anybody else.
Zoe, why should somebody donate their time or money to No Kid Hungry?
In order for kids to grow up and have their fullest, most individual potential realized, they need to eat. I mean, it's just a basic need of everybody. And there's something we can do about it. And if we all work together, we can actually end childhood hunger. It's not that difficult. We just need to do it together.
What does baking a difference mean to you in regards to No Kid Hungry?
I bake not only because it's a joy to me and obviously to bring joy to other people, but it's also to nourish my family, my community. And so I feel like as a baker, if we work together as a community, we can do something as powerful as ending childhood hunger. So baking is joyful, but it's also meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Zoe, thanks so much for being here with us today. We'll see you at the end of the show for more questions. For more information on Zoe, you can go to zoebakes.com, or you can follow her on Instagram and YouTube at Zoe Bakes. If you're enjoying Need to Know, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and watch us on YouTube once a week.
So now it is time for a segment we call the Bold Baking Hotline, and this is where we answer questions from the audience. And because we have so many baking experts with us today, we thought we would include them in the conversation. The very first question is about shipping baked goods during the holiday season. How do you preserve them? How do you get them looking their best when they arrive to your loved ones?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is don't choose a cookie that's super, super delicate. So you want to choose something like a shortbread or sugar cookies or something that has just a little bit more body to them. Something like a lacy cookie may not make the journey. And then also choose cookies that will be just as delicious, if not more delicious, in a day or 2 or 3. And so just by choosing the cookies that are going to withstand the journey, that's half the battle. And then pack them really well. I like to individually wrap something if it's highly decorative, and also make sure that it's bubble wrapped so things aren't sliding around in the box. But I think just if you choose the right cookies, they really will make the journey well.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Mm-hmm. Next up, somebody asked, what are your tips for baking in bulk during the holidays, especially for parties and events?
When baking for a large crowd, I highly recommend making things ahead and freezing them. You can freeze cookie dough. Let's say you're making like ginger cookies or something, or molasses cookies for Christmas. You can 100% make the dough, scoop it, freeze it on a pan. Then once the dough balls are frozen, you put them in a Ziploc bag. You can make an entire cake. You can even frost an entire cake. Put it into the freezer, freeze it, then wrap it in plastic wrap and tin foil, and same goes for pies. Either freeze the unbaked pie or bake the pie and then freeze it.
Okay, so this is a trick I learned from working in professional kitchens, and a trick that my grandmother used to use, and that's the freezer. Make the freezer your friend. I make a bunch of cookie dough early on, I freeze it, and that way I can just bake and bake and bake and not have to mix. And so I've done part of the process ahead of time, and it just saves you time and anxiety, and it makes the whole process much, much easier. So make the freezer your friend.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Ami and I here at Bigger Bolder Baking, we freeze everything, especially this time of year. Pie crusts and cookie doughs, everything. I even pipe my cookies and I freeze them on a tray flat, and then I bake them off later.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's such a time saver, and it helps you to enjoy the process so much more.
So this is a good question. What advice would you give to somebody who's hoping to start their own holiday baking traditions, but might feel a little bit overwhelmed in the kitchen?
I would say start simple. Choose 1 or 2 recipes, and don't overwhelm yourself. Like when I was starting out to make the sugar cookie houses, I started really, really simple, just 4 walls, and then we decorated them. And then as time goes on and your comfort gets more, and as you get more comfortable, you can add more elements and more recipes.
And finally, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to bake for a large holiday gathering for the first time?
The best thing about baking for a holiday crowd is that you can typically do most baked goods the day before, leaving you lots of time to enjoy your company on the day of.
When baking for a large holiday gathering, I would say that first, read your recipe. Make sure you have all the ingredients before you get started in the kitchen, and then just follow the recipe. That's simple, that's pastry, and that's science.
When baking for a large holiday gathering, it's all about planning. You've got to plan, and it'll be so much easier. Now, when I'm doing a big event like that, I call it my Friday bakes. And a Friday bake is, when we used to have the cake shop, I couldn't wait to Friday because we always had the easier things to do and the more difficult things during the week. So you've got to have the majority of them Friday bakes, easy bakes, with a few showstoppers, and it'll just make your experience so much better and so much sweeter.
A big thank you to all our guests for answering those burning questions. Thank you so much for joining us, and to our special guests. I hope you feel inspired to go and make your own traditions this holiday season. And thank you to No Kid Hungry for allowing us to be a part of their vital mission. Please support the fight to end childhood hunger by donating at the URL below or scan the QR code. And don't forget to subscribe to Need to Know wherever you listen to podcasts and watch us every week on YouTube. From HRN and the Bold Baking Network, you were watching the Need to Know Baking Entertainment podcast.